All right, so let's get this next fireside going. Let's bring up Sean King and Steve Xeller with Veritone. Come on up, guys, please. All right. So there was a big announcement that dropped this morning between Veritone and Stats Perform. Have a seat, please. About a really cool new product that they partnered on called OptiVoice. And we're going to chat about that a little bit. But first, I'd love for you guys, if you don't mind, just quickly introduce yourselves.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sean King. I'm the Senior Vice President for Veritone, and I oversee our commercial divisions that include our products and technology and managed services to support mostly media, entertainment, and advertising companies.
Awesome. And Steve?
I'm Steve Xeller. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Stats Perform. We are essentially the sort of the backbone of, excuse me, most of what you see in sports. So all the story of sport that you see through, athletics in terms of being on a broadcast or applications out like things like Yahoo Sports and DraftKings, all those types of applications typically run on data from Stats Perform.
I think when you guys were walking up, I said you were both from Veritone. My bad, Steve, of course. So I think that, OptiVoice, right? And let's talk for a moment. We are in this age of sort of like instant bite-sized content. Why is voice relevant to sports, Steve? Why is voice relevant now to what Stats Perform is doing?
Yeah, so I think, as I said, we power a lot of, what I call kind of the killer sports apps that are out there. And when I talk with some of the business folks and the technical folks with these apps, they're saying that they want to take these apps from people picking them up twice a day to picking them up 10 or 15 or 20 times a day. And I think that voice just adds that level of engagement, right? When you think about, sports are really about stories, about competitors. And, there's no better way to tell a story than verbally, right? So with a voice. And so I think that's why we're excited about what we're doing with Veritone, because it's really bringing sports to that next level of engagement. And that's really an exciting time for us.
Yeah, and if I could add a little bit, it's not just the engagement is key, but at the speed and scale in which we're able to do it at together. Mm-hmm. I mean, taking those data feeds, whether it's one game or 10,000 games, I mean, we're still executing this at scale that is actually faster than broadcast delay. So from the data feeds coming in to all of the NLG that's being processed, and then the outputs that are coming out, either in a pregame, a live stream, or a postgame recap. I mean, we're able to deliver this at such a scale that current methods can't do today.
It's really interesting. So let's game this out just a little bit, right? So maybe a baseball game, there are balls and strikes that are happening. When you're listening to a game or you're watching a game, you hear the announcer saying what happened on the field. Mm-hmm. But somebody is recording those balls and strikes in real time. The data is really fast, right? Much faster than the announcer. So that data then becomes available if I'm on it, tracking an app, right? Mm-hmm. But now I can actually listen to those stats come to life. Is that that's what we're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a big part of our business historically has always been supporting those broadcasters. So, we have to think about, what's happening in a game before it happens. And so, when you have an announcer talking about, somebody just scored a touchdown and they say, hey, that was Tom Brady's 50th touchdown, this season. That information's all come from us, right? And so over the last, probably 4 or 5 years, we've focused a lot more on how do we automate that so that information can be generated in an automated fashion and then pushed out. And, typically it's been pushed out through that broadcast or through some of these apps. Now with Veritone, it'll be able to be pushed out through a voice, which is a lifelike voice that I think is highly engaging to fans.
Yeah, and going back to your first question, even on the bite-sized content, the ability to personalize it and localize it. I mean, if you're watching that game or listening to that game, that may not be in your native language that you're able to do that. So be able to not just be able to get it in that time, but to get it into a language and making it sports more broadly accessible to the masses.
Right.
Just provides such a wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, I think the localization is actually really pretty. It starts to it's almost mind-boggling a little bit. Think about we've got the World Cup's coming up, right?
Right.
It's the biggest sporting event in the world every 4 years. People tuning in from 180 countries, right? All these different languages, but they're going to be able to actually, hypothetically, access content, tickers from those games in real time in their local language.
Right. Exactly.
It's pretty amazing. So I think that there's an inclusion component of this too.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about that, Sean.
Well, I mean, for the inclusion, again, we're talking about a scale that is not currently feasible within our current broadcast, ecosystem. I mean, we're wanting to make sure every league, every sport, every genre, if it's in male or female,
Right.
every sport league has a seat at the table. Every fan has a chance to be able to engage, with their team or with those groups. And like right now, there's broadcast or broadcast television, terrestrial streaming platforms, there's only so much content that they're going to create or broadcast to be on here,
Right.
which is not going to be enough. I mean,
Right.
for most of us that live in the United States, there's blackouts on what you
Right.
can and can't watch given what you have. We just want to make sure that collectively we're empowering everyone to have a seat at the table and let those leagues and let those teams be accessible to everyone to be able to engage with their content.
I think it's interesting. So you're almost democratizing the broadcast capabilities from sports at all levels. So like, think about high school, right? So now that I've got a lot of nephews in high school, we're friends with kids in high school, we're following their sports, right? We're watching the stream online, which may not always come with, a good broadcast, like an audio broadcast, but the stats are there,
Right.
because those are all being gathered now as well. So those, what's happening could actually come more to life than it ever has before.
Yeah. I think the point Sean made is one of the things we've made a big investment in the last couple of years is women's sports. So getting the data to a level of parity as the men's sports. And so, again, a solution like this, sometimes, women's sports, they're not as easily found on broadcast, right? They don't have the same type of broadcast deal that the men's sports have. And so, being able to have this option for women's sports, I think is incredible because, as you see in the news these days, I mean, there's, the Rugby World Cup is going on over the last couple weeks. Huge crowds. Some of the women's national teams playing over in Europe this year have had sellout crowds in these stadiums. I mean, women's sports is really on the rise. And so, for us, being able to sort of help lead that investment has been incredible. So now being able to bring voice to that will be just exceptional.
Tell us about the integration a little bit, just at a technical level. I mean, Veritone's got, cloud-based services, Stats Perform does as well. Where is this technology living and where is it being delivered from?
Well, I mean, it's wonderful from both. I mean,
Right.
Stats is, the leading data provider.
Right.
And one of the things that Veritone really specializes and works in are, complex media workflows and then the outputs that come from that
Right.
and the actionable intelligence that comes from it.
Right.
And so this is perfect because, they have very clean, wonderful data feed that's labeled to
Yes.
come in to allow our team
Nice.
to be able to do what they need to do to evoke the necessary workflows and then produce a premium output. I mean, this is a purely technical integration
Right.
that is just allowing, this broadcastability and scale.
Did you develop new APIs for this, or are these APIs that existed?
No, these are existing APIs. So we've combined a couple of different Stats Perform APIs, and then Veritone is taking those either in real time or some of the like pre-match content is just done on a scheduled basis. And then they send that back to us, and then we're sending it out to clients in a combined, a number of different delivery methods, but typically in an API. And then, depending on the quality of what the output needs to be, there's a couple of other output levels we can do. Yeah.
So let's talk about the art a little bit and the broadcaster voice. Let's talk about that. So I'm listening to my favorite, my team. I'm used to the broadcaster's voice that might be broadcasting that. Am I going to hear the data that's coming from that in that broadcaster's voice? Is that going to vary?
It's going to vary from those. I mean, it absolutely can. I mean, Veritone talks a lot about our voice capabilities, and we will always strive to make the best and highest quality of voice that's out there in the market with the proper consents that are in place from those. But we have a treasure trove of different voices and diversity of voices, both male, female, different dialects, different languages that are readily available.
Right.
But by all means, if we want to provide a personalized experience to each one of these, or one specific to a team, to a league, that is 100% capable. Again, it's our commitment jointly to make sure that we're providing this at scale that has that ability to be personalized and localized to whatever size
And
audience
when you're localizing, if it's a feed of a certain game, let's just say it's a soccer game, right? And it's going out to 30 different languages. Is it the same voice that you're using to get it into those languages, and they're just the people are hearing it obviously in their localized language, but it's the same general voice, or are you doing different voices for different countries or nations, or male, female, whatever. I'm just
It's really the art of the possible about
Right.
what you want to have.
Right.
Right now during this one, newly, like we do have some set voices that we have for the different languages that's there. But as this continues to evolve and grow, the diversity and scale of the different voices that are going to be over there or be available is definitely going to grow with it.
right. Where is the vision for this? Like, this is exciting because it's new, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think when new products get out there, we learn the customers are going to teach us how to use it, right? And we're right at that point, right, where the customers are really going to teach you, both as companies, how to use it. But what do you see as the vision? Where's this going? Like, are we going to?
I think, for me, I think that there's more content created these days than ever before, and I think, I'll be honest, I've got 5 kids. I think most of the content that is created is not very good, and the kids still, tune in for tons of it on their devices. But for me, I think the real power of this is that, we've started with, doing the live game and doing the play-by-play because, to show people that I think is very powerful. But I think, because, we've got, decades, if not, like 100 years of data in some sports, we've got the story of sports going back, that 100 years. So, I mean, we can develop any type of content and then put a voice to it. So I think for me, the real sort of big value in this is not just this first, solution set that we're coming out with, but it's, really coming out with a fully customizable level of sports content for the fan, right? You think about it, like all these big companies now, right? I mean, obviously betting has become legalized in the U.S. You've got these huge betting operators now that are starting to become content creators, right? Because they need to get people into their app more often. And so, but it's a very expensive game, and you can spend a lot of money on a program, and then it flops, right? You get a big startup cost, you spend all this money, and then it flops. The idea behind this is that you can develop things, you can test them out, kind of in the lab, see what works live, and then change it up, without a huge amount of upfront investment.
I tell you what, the thing that, like, the light bulb that just came on for me was like, we've got the whole history of sports.
Right.
So you can actually go back and hear a game, a historical game, in a kind of a new context.
Right. Yeah.
That's really exciting.
Yeah, and that ability to get in and create further personalization of it.
Yeah.
I mean, to go about for the gambling and sports betting teams from those, but to be able to have that hyper personalization of what are some of these key highlights, what's going on, how am I following, and potentially even being delivering a bespoke audio feed of what's going on that's specific either to your interests or what you decided to pick that weekend.
Right.
And those, I mean, it's again, but it's just taking the structured data and creating a really wonderful lifelike output from.
Yeah.
And then from that point, sky's the limit to where it can take it from there.
Once in a while, I'll come across a channel and it's an old, football game from the '60s, and there's a voiceover that's recalling that game.
Right.
It's a new voiceover, right?
Yeah.
Recalling, and so it's really kind of this same idea of being able to look back on content in a completely new way, which is really, really exciting. And I think it is fun, the art of the possible. What voice do I want to listen to this game in?
Right.
That's really fun. Well, guys, where do you see things in 5 years when it comes to broadcast? And when are we going to be able to? We're watching a broadcast, maybe it's live, but are we going to be able to hear the announcer and maybe a voice that we want to hear? Is that where things are going?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the visions for this is exactly that, right? If I've got a favorite soccer player and I want to have that person call the game. I mean, I'll use a football example. I'm more of an American football fan. If I want to go back and watch or watch University of Florida football games, my son's there now. And I want Tim Tebow to be calling that game, right, and offering, his insights. We can build that, and I think that's what fans are wanting these days. They want that level of customization, right? And I think that this just offers tons of capabilities, like you said before, like the betting angle, right? I'm not really a gambler, but obviously if you're a gambler, there's a different type of insight you're looking for as the game goes on. And if we could build a product that allows those insights to be, delivered in a real-time basis, so as you're watching the game and thinking about what you might want to bet on during the game, if something's coming out to you in a voice, it gives you insight on what you want to bet on next.
Yeah.
really fun to think about. Sean, anything come to your mind when you think about, where are we going to be in 5 years?
No, I mean, I think about it, it's going to be, if anything the pandemic did, is it honed in a lot of our different interests and our different awarenesses of different types of content, whether it be, connected TV, broadcast television, podcast, audio feed, different, like the content machine stopped, so we look for content everywhere.
Yeah.
And the expectations have come is, I want more personalized content that is to me, to my interests, and everything here. And so again, to exactly what Steve had said, like how do I want that delivered to me, and in what sound, and who is delivering it to me? I mean, it's definitely going to be there.
Well, it's exciting times, and OptiVoice is an example of like what's happening now, the partnerships, the integrations. We've seen several examples of that here. This is a prime example of that, guys. It's been great chatting with you. Thanks so much for the time. Let's give it up for Sean King and Steve Xeller.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
Yeah. Cheers.